Imagine a young woman in California working as a supermarket cashier, wondering what she's supposed to do with her life. No Hollywood dynasty behind her. No famous surname. No guarantee that anyone would ever remember her name. Within a few years, that same woman would become Catwoman, earn millions per film, collect 3 Academy Award nominations, win a Golden Globe and a BAFTA, disappear from Hollywood at the height of her fame, and then return years later as if she had never left. But Michelle Pfeiffer's story isn't simply about a beautiful actress who became famous. It's the story of a woman who nearly lost control of her own life before Hollywood had even given her a real career. And the strangest part is that the biggest threat to her future didn't come from a bad movie or a jealous rival. It came from people she trusted. Michelle Marie Pfeiffer was born on April 29, 1958, in Santa Ana, California. Her father worked as an air conditioning contractor. Her mother was a housewife, and she grew up with an older brother and 2 younger sisters, including future actress Dee Pfeiffer. Nothing about her childhood guaranteed a future in movies. She attended Fountain Valley High School, graduated in 1976, and went on to Golden West College. For a while, life looked ordinary. She worked as a cashier at a Vons supermarket and even trained briefly to become a court stenographer. Then, in 1978, she entered the Miss Orange County pageant and won, later placing 6th at Miss California. The pageant circuit helped her land an agent. There was already friction, though. Some agents thought her surname too hard to spell and wanted her to change it. Michelle refused, a small decision that says something about who she was becoming, willing to learn but unwilling to erase herself to fit Hollywood's expectations. She debuted with a 1-episode role on Fantasy Island in 1978. More small television and film roles followed, but nothing suggested stardom yet, and she felt she was often being cast on appearance alone. Then came Grease 2. In 1982, at 23, Michelle landed her first starring film role, playing the female lead in the sequel to the 1978 hit. On paper, this should have been her big break. Instead, the film became a critical and commercial failure, and nearly a career-ending label. Her agent later admitted that after Grease 2, nobody wanted to hire her. Then came the audition that changed everything, Scarface. Director Brian De Palma initially refused to even audition her, but producer Martin Bregman pushed for her to be considered. She won the role of Elvira Hancock, Tony Montana's glamorous, troubled wife. The film was violent and divisive on release, but Michelle's performance cut through. People noticed her. The actress Hollywood had nearly written off after Grease 2 was suddenly being described as a star on the verge of breaking through. Scarface gave her credibility. The next challenge was proving she wasn't a one-movie sensation. That answer arrived across the second half of the 1980s. She appeared in Into the Night, Lady Hawk, Sweet Liberty, and Amazon Women on the Moon, but the real breakthrough came in 1987 with The Witches of Eastwick, starring alongside Jack Nicholson, Cher, and Susan Sarandon, a commercial hit that showed audiences a different side of her. Then, in Married to the Mob, 1988, she played a murdered gangster's widow, changing her look entirely, a curly brunette wig, a Brooklyn accent, and earned her first Golden Globe nomination. Hollywood began to understand. Michelle Pfeiffer wasn't one actress. She could become almost anyone. That realization led to the most extraordinary stretch of her career. Later in 1988, she appeared in Dangerous Liaisons as Madame de Tourvel, a role built on restraint, earning a BAFTA and an Oscar nomination. The following year came The Fabulous Baker Boys, in which she played Susie Diamond, a former call girl turned lounge singer. She spent 4 months training her voice and sang the role herself. The film was modest at the box office, but critics praised her almost universally, and the now famous piano performance became one of the defining images of her career. That award season, she won the Golden Globe for Best Actress and swept critics' awards nationwide. The woman who'd struggled to find work after Grease 2 was suddenly one of Hollywood's most important actresses. Success came with a price. The bigger she became, the more the industry tried to define her: beautiful, blonde, glamorous. Hollywood wanted an image. Michelle wanted roles. That tension shaped the rest of her career. By the early 1990s, she was among the highest-paid actresses in the world. Then came the role that permanently attached her name to movie history, Catwoman. In Batman Returns, she played Selina Kyle, a part that had changed hands after Annette Bening dropped out due to pregnancy. Michelle trained in kickboxing and built a character who was vulnerable, furious, funny, dangerous, and unforgettable. The costume, the whip, the performance, all became iconic, arguably outgrowing the film itself. But behind the glamorous image, her personal life had already taken darker turns. When she was around 20 and newly arrived in Hollywood, Michelle was taken in by a couple who ran a metaphysics and vegetarian group she later described as a cult. At first, they seemed helpful. They helped her stop drinking, smoking, and taking drugs. But gradually, by her own account, the relationship became controlling. The group took over much of her life and much of her money. Years later, she described herself as having been brainwashed. It's worth noting this account comes entirely from her own later interviews, with no independently confirmed names, dates, or documentation, so the details should be treated as her personal characterization. Still, she was building a career while people around her controlled her decisions and finances. She eventually got out, and it may explain the intensely private, selective person audiences would come to know. Her career, meanwhile, kept climbing. In 1992, she got another Oscar nomination for Love Field. She worked with Martin Scorsese on The Age of Innocence. She starred in and co-produced Dangerous Minds, 1995, a box office hit despite mixed reviews, with her performance as teacher Luann Johnson becoming one of her most recognizable roles. Through her production company, Via Rosa Productions, she was now shaping the stories she wanted to tell, not just waiting for opportunities. Then something unexpected happened. She began stepping away. At the end of the 1990s, she wound down her production company and reduced her workload, moving in the 2000s into what was essentially semi-retirement to spend more time with family. For a star at the height of her power, this was a strange choice. Most actors fight to stay visible. Michelle did the opposite. Audiences saw much less of her for several years, though she never stopped believing she had more to give. She returned with What Lies Beneath, 2000, opposite Harrison Ford, a major commercial success, despite Michelle having a severe fear of water while the film required underwater scenes. The studio brought in a scuba diver to help her prepare. Then came I Am Sam and White Oleander, the latter featuring her as a murderous artist in one of the most complex performances of her career. After Sinbad, Legend of the Seven Seas, 2003, she disappeared from public view again for 4 years while Hollywood moved on and new franchises took over the box office. In 2007, she returned loudly, appearing in Hairspray and Stardust as very different villains. The media called it a comeback, but Michelle didn't seem interested in proving she still belonged. She simply kept choosing interesting roles. She later said being away from the spotlight had been comfortable, but eventually she realized she wasn't done. She still had more to do and more to say. In 2017, she returned to major prominence with several demanding roles in a single year. A fragile woman in crisis in Where is Kyra? Called one of the performances of her life. Ruth Madoff in The Wizard of Lies, an Emmy nomination and a Golden Globe nomination. A strongly praised turn in Mother, and a role in the ensemble cast of Murder on the Orient Express. After years of selective work, she was suddenly everywhere again. Then came Marvel. In 2018, she entered the MCU as Janet Van Dyne, the original Wasp, in Ant-Man and the Wasp, the actress who'd once been Catwoman, now part of one of the biggest franchises in the world. She returned briefly in Avengers, Endgame, and later appeared in Maleficent, Mistress of Evil. Across these years, she never stopped refusing to be predictable. A superhero, a villain, a mother, a damaged woman, a historical figure, a dramatic lead, rarely repeating herself. In 2020, French Exit brought another Golden Globe nomination. In 2022, she played former First Lady Betty Ford in The First Lady. In 2023, she returned as Janet Van Dyne in Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. By 2026, she'd entered yet another phase, starring in 2 television series, The Madison and Margot's Got Money Troubles. For The Madison, she reportedly agreed to star without reading a script, since creator Taylor Sheridan prefers to write after casting his actors, a detail worth double-checking before treating it as confirmed, since it isn't independently sourced here. Still, it's a remarkable position for someone once told nobody wanted to hire her. Perhaps the most powerful part of Michelle Pfeiffer's story isn't the awards. It's that she repeatedly refused to become the version of herself other people wanted. A failed movie once threatened to bury her career. She took control back. She stepped away when she chose to, and returned on her own terms. Those contradictions aren't weaknesses, they're the reason her story holds up. Think back to the young woman behind the supermarket checkout. Her career was never really about staying famous. It was about staying free to choose. She once said she'd realized she wasn't done, that she had more to do and more to say. Michelle Pfeiffer didn't simply survive Hollywood. She survived its expectations. After nearly 5 decades in the business, the most surprising thing about her isn't how famous she became. It's how often she walked away from the fame and still managed to come back stronger. The girl who once stood behind a supermarket register became Catwoman. The actress whose first major film was called a failure became an Oscar-nominated star. The woman who once lost control of her own life became fiercely protective of her privacy. And the star who disappeared when everyone expected her to keep performing eventually returned to prove one final point. You can leave the spotlight, but if you still have something to say, Hollywood will be waiting.